All right, welcome in to the Coach and the Kicker segment, the week one of edition. No more week zero, Coach. We're all in with week one. Everybody's been on the field. And boy, did we have some wild finishes here in the state of Florida, Coach. How was your weekend, Coach?
It's good, and happy Labor Day to you and everybody else out there. We live in a great country. We're very fortunate.
That's right. This is probably one of the few Labor Days you haven't had to work, Coach, over the years.
You know what? I didn't even think about that, but you're right. It's probably been, oh my gosh, I don't know, maybe 40 years, something like that, and counting. It's been a long time.
There you go. Speaking of that, before we get to the games on the field, which we got some wild ones to talk about from New Orleans to Gainesville to Tampa here and all around the state. So talk to me about, I was doing a little research on you. For some reason, I did not realize you were from the Tampa Bay area. You were a star player at Dixie Holland High School over in St. Pete. I had no idea.
I don't know if that's all true. I was a quarterback at Dixie Holland High School and was getting recruited by everybody. And then we played Sarasota Riverview, and I threw 4 interceptions and got letters from nobody. Everybody said good luck. So it wasn't surprising when I went to Missouri that they moved me to safety right away.
Now, did you guys run a kind of an option offense back in the day?
It was kind of a run and shoot where I just kind of sprinted out and I either ran or I shot the ball out there somewhere. Hopefully the right team. Obviously, in Riverview game, it wasn't.
How did you end up honestly, how did you end up making the decision to go to Missouri as opposed to other places?
Well, like I said, a lot of people were recruiting me. And when that happened, a lot of teams fell off and the state of Florida wasn't recruited like it is, like the last number of years, certainly. And I had an offer to go to Dartmouth and Naval Academy. Okay. And there's going to be George Welsh was the head coach at Naval Academy. And I thought about that. My brother went to Air Force Academy, but I just, when Missouri, I didn't know Missouri was in the Big Eight in those days. And, I wanted to go to the very best school I could. So that's where I went.
George Welsh, if you fans out there don't remember, George Welsh had a great career at Navy. Then he went on to Virginia and had a really good coaching career at Virginia. I actually was just watching a documentary the other day about the 1990 Virginia and Georgia Tech when they were both number 1 and 2 in the country, vying for a national championship. So George Welsh, he's a very, very good football coach. All right, let's get onto the field. We had some wild finishes. No wilder than last night in New Orleans. Florida State 24, LSU 23. Florida State, give them credit. They played really well for about 58 minutes of that game. And then the last 2 minutes got super crazy and super wild. Let's start at the end there. What is Mike Norvell thinking on the 1 yard line to run a toss play as opposed to a handoff or a quarterback draw or something where you eliminate the probability of a mishandled ball like that?
Well, yeah, I'm sure you're not thinking about those things, and the pitch was, I saw the play. I'd have to go back and look at it again. That just got through the hands of the running back, or he got it and got in there and fumbled the ball, gave LSU a chance. No question, because the game could have been over there. And then what a great job LSU did. The quarterback, when I was at Oregon, I recruited that quarterback.
Yeah.
He a really good guy. I really liked him. I liked him a lot. He's from Vegas area. And I didn't even realize he had transferred to LSU from Arizona State. And of course, I know Herm Edwards really well. And
Jaden Daniels.
Yeah. And what a great job they did with very little time going all the way down the field. To score and then to have the extra point blocked. It was I think it was a tight end or whoever they used as that wing on the left side of the extra point team. Those guys are taught to take 2. They're supposed to stab hard with their inside hand, make sure there's no penetration inside,
right,
and then step out real hard to try to get something on the hip of the outside rusher, thinking that the outside rusher's angle is too wide to be able to get to the block point.
Right.
Well, what happened was either probably the left tackle didn't get thick and wide enough, to have a smaller space there. And certainly the wing or whoever they use that wing, usually a tight end, didn't get inside hand on that defender, and he got through the crease and blocked the kick.
And that wasn't just the first one; that was the second block kick. They had a field goal blocked earlier in the game. Almost, I think it was the same part of the formation. The left tackle, the wing guy, left tackle, where it was blocked on the first short field goal earlier in the game. And Kelly said after the game that he had made a personnel change and replaced the left tackle, and the same situation happens the second time.
Yeah, it's always hard. That little area is pretty hard. A lot of people, if they strengthen that area, that's why everybody tries to put 3 people on the guard and try to get push, up inside. But they did a great job, and the special team coordinator for Florida State deserves some credit. For seeing that, being vulnerable, even though it's the first game and they don't have LSU film. I don't know. They did a good job there, and then LSU also dropped 2 punts.
Exactly. The whole game was a special. Florida State missed a field goal. You dropped the 2 punts with the young kid back there. How much? I know you want to have a confidence in a kid, but when the kid drops the first punt earlier in the game, is it just an automatic to put that kid back there a second time and keep him back there, especially in that kind of moment late in the game?
I don't know, because sometimes I've been in that same situation, and I've kept the guy in there and gotten burned, and I've also replaced him. But I always, you always want a guy that can break it all the way, but you don't ever give up. You always want to make sure whoever you have back there is going to catch the ball. That was always my deal. I went for that more than the guy that could maybe break the big play, but you hope a guy can do both. But that was tough, and of course that young guy is going to have to just rise back up, and hopefully he'll be a great player and do better. But tough decision, for the coaches. Obviously they wish they probably would have replaced him because it cost them.
What are your thoughts about Brian Kelly potentially going for 2 instead of kicking it? With you have all the momentum in the world. Do you seriously consider going for 2 when you score on the last play of the game, or is it in your mind a no-brainer to kick the extra point?
Kick the extra point. I would have. I'd extend the game.
Yeah.
You're really in your home area. You've got all the fan support.
Right.
You've got momentum because you just drove the ball 90-something yards all the way down the field. There's no question I would have kicked the extra point as well.
Yep. Okay. Special teams. We saw a lot of special teams errors all over the country this weekend. Is it just I won't say neglect, but is it just not spending enough time on it? You've coached a lot of special teams. Is it just execution, or is it a combination of both?
Well, it's all of it. It's interesting. We talked about last week about who has the advantage on playing a game or not.
Yep.
And I said that Florida State, I didn't know what kind of advantage that really was, because they didn't play a very good opponent. But LSU had no game.
Right.
And the one thing that Florida State, at least they were able to get out and get their special teams in a game situation. They were able to have a game under their belt and have film, and those kind of things. People would probably say, and the coaches at Florida State would probably say, yes, it helped us playing a game, even though it wasn't a team that was even close to what LSU is. So,
right.
But the special teams is a big deal. It's, they practice it. I know Brian Kelly. I've faced him when he was head coach at Cincinnati. I know him well. Tremendous coach. And I know that he was very thorough. I know that they worked extremely hard in practice on the special teams. It's unfortunate, but it was. But game day is different.
You're right.
Game day is absolutely different than practice. And you find out who can really play when the game's on the line, when the lights come on, and some guys rise those occasions, some guys don't.
Do you guys typically in practice, especially? I know you don't do a whole lot of live stuff. Do you do live special teams field goal block, that kind of stuff, especially as you get closer to that first game? Do you do that stuff live, or is it more just a kind of thud situation?
Well, I always went live a few times, but you do worry about getting somebody hurt,
Right.
and that's a big deal. So usually I went live for a few snaps, but not a ton. It's certainly not going to be like game day, and certainly not going to be like Florida State, LSU, those type of opponents.
Right.
So you always get worried about that in your first game. You always are concerned about that. But you try to do as much live work till you feel confident that you'll get it done during the game.
I mean, you had East Carolina, NC State, where the kid missed an extra point with under 2 minutes to go. Then he misses a game-winning 40-yard field goal, which prevented a huge upset for East Carolina. You had some punting issues in other places. I mean, the USF runs a kickoff back for a touchdown in their game. I mean, but there's just, special teams. I've said it. I work with kids here in the Tampa Bay area, kickers and punters. It's the most undercoached position in both college and high school football from a time perspective. And it's not your fault. You guys have time limitations. You only have so much time to do it. It's just, to me, it's the most undercoached part of the game. That matters so much.
Well, that's why I ran the special teams the last 5 years, when I was head coach in South Florida, just because I wanted to pay attention to it, make sure it was covered well. So yeah, there's a lot of things that happen. I was fortunate. I had the Gramatica brothers, I had Bill and Santiago. I recruited Martin, to Kansas State. So that developed a relationship with the family. And then I had Mike Bonatti, and, was really hard because Mike Bonatti was working at Busch Gardens my last year at South Florida, and he got hurt his back.
Wow.
And I had tryouts for kickers, and it eventually really cost us. Last game of the year when we played UConn in the snow, I had a kicker that he couldn't kick, and it's a long story, but the kickers are important to have those guys and have awfully good ones there, and also the protection for those kickers to have confidence.
Right. All right, let's get to Jordan Travis. Quarterback, Florida State, played really well, especially on third down. They were 11 of 17 on third down. He made some big throws, made some plays with his feet. What'd you see out of Travis that impressed you?
Well, I thought he managed the game very well.
Yep.
He didn't make a lot of mistakes, and he handled the offense, and he knew the offense well. And I was more impressed with him than I thought I would be.
Right.
I didn't know if he was, somebody that could take you to the promised land. You know what I mean? But he managed the game. He did what he was asked to do. He used his personnel well.
Yep.
I thought the plays that were called were done well. Thought the offense coordinator did a good job, and I was impressed, especially towards the end of the game when they drove it all the way down there.
Yep.
People are going to talk about the pitch play, but I don't know. It was just kind of a toss to the perimeter, but I thought a lot of the play calling during that drive was really good, and I thought he did a good job.
How much is the head coach? Would that pitch play, would that been a situation potentially when you hear that play call come in from the situation they were in 1 yard line, they had the lead. LSU, the only way you can lose that game is by turning it over. Is that a situation where you might, as the head coach, say, hey, we're not pitching it here, call another play, hand it off, or do something where you're not pitching it?
Probably not. If it was inside the one, if it was like 2 inches or 3 inches, I would have told him definitely go, quarterback sneak it. Just don't do something like that. But probably not. You trust your offensive coordinator.
Okay.
And, you give him a lot of responsibility, and, you have to trust that.
Is it Florida State escaped? You could see the relief on Coach Norvell's face post game that he realized he got away with one last night as far as the way that game ended. Do you think this is a catapult for Florida State? They got a week off. You got Louisville. Is this a catapult kind of game? It's a big game. You had to win the game. He needed a win like this. How do you think this win accentuates Florida State's season?
Well, the bottom line is you win.
Yeah.
It doesn't really, at the end of the day,
you guys don't care as long as you got one more point.
All right. As long as you win the game, and the confidence
right
to go into New Orleans,
right,
into LSU's backyard. And Baton Rouge is right there. And to win that game, and what they're going to point to is that it shouldn't even come down to that. We really dominated the game.
They did.
They score on that one when they're right down there. Shoot us. Notre Dame's not going to probably come back and get that game.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be huge for those players, and they're going to practice that much harder. They're going to practice with that much more focus. It's going to bring them together. Wins. At the end of the day, you win.
Right.
And yeah, it's huge for Florida State. It's certainly going to help them in a great way.
I got you. All right, let's go to Gainesville. What another wild finish. Utah comes to town. Florida wins 29-26. They intercept the ball in the end zone the last 20 seconds of the game. Utah came in there and, they played well. They went toe-to-toe with the Gators. And from what I saw, it looked like Florida was the team that was kind of wilting there at the end. Utah had a huge drive to start the second half where they ran the ball down Florida's throat for like 11-play drive, scored a touchdown. They fumble on the 1 yard line, or Utah fumbles or gets stopped on the 1 yard line. They turn it over late in the game there at the last 20 seconds. Just your thoughts of the Florida-Utah game.
Tremendous game.
Yes.
I was very impressed with Utah, and I knew what they were doing offensively, bringing in those tight splits with the tight ends and tight, and they're just running inside zone. Really, it's a daylight play. Just giving the ball back to the running back with enough room. He's just looking for daylight for a crease. And they did all game and then ran the boots off it. And very, very impressed with how tough they were.
Yep.
Very impressed at their resilience going into Gainesville on a long trip like that. I can see why they were preseason ranked 7th in the country. And I think they're going to have a tremendous year. I really do.
Yep.
They have a tremendous coach. He's done a great job there. And that's a good team. And I thought, in the end, they're probably the better team.
I agree.
Than Florida. But Florida, I was so impressed with them as well. Got a new head coach coming in their first game, after last year when Florida kind of, really struggled, towards the end of the year to play like they did. And those are two very, very good football teams that I thought were extremely well coached. I was very impressed. Really was. I was really impressed with that game. And in fact, my two girls and I watched that game, and they enjoyed it as well. So,
well, you saw the excitement everybody has around Anthony Richardson. The play
sure.
He is at quarterback, the athlete. He made on the 2-point play late in the game. The move he made on the 2-point play to avoid a sack to throw the 2-point play. The runs the elusiveness that he shows at quarterback. How hard, you're a defensive guy, how hard is that to scheme against a guy like that with such natural athletic ability who could throw the ball as well?
Well, it's just what you said. It's hard, because if you've got a quarterback that you feel like can't beat you throwing the ball, then you can load up and, make them beat you that way.
Right.
You've got a quarterback that can throw and run. That's why, years I was at South Florida, we had the Matt Grothies and the Markwell Blackwells, and the BJ Daniels. They could all throw and run, and that's why we were, had so much success. And it's very hard for defense to stop that. You load up the box. Now you got, man-to-man coverage on the outside, or you go to split safety coverages, and now you got a light box where you can run at, and quarterback running the ball, even if you have quarterback run plays as well. And Utah, the quarterback could run as well.
Yeah.
So you had two very good offenses, two very good defenses playing, the specialty teams. I thought that was the best game of all the games. I thought that was the best game that I saw. Really did. I thought it was extremely well played.
No, I agree with you. And Florida had some, they were able to run the ball. They showed some running ability. The both offensive line played pretty good, I thought.
Right.
They were sound. They opened up holes. Utah was in position to tackle Richardson several times, and just Richardson's athleticism was just too much for a couple of those linebacker safety guys for Utah on a couple of those runs. That extended drives and things like that. And you're right. Both teams played really well. What'd you think of talk about playing in that atmosphere in the swamp, 90,000, that kind of
Right.
atmosphere at night. Talk about you as an opposing team playing in that kind of atmosphere.
Well, I was an analyst up at Florida State. When we went down and played Florida, and it was really surreal in a lot of ways. I'd never been in the swamp, never had even. I'd gone to a game when I was in high school, but that was a long time before.
Right.
But I'd never coached in there, and I thought it was quite an atmosphere. It reminded me of Oregon, to be honest with you. Oregon's very similar that way, where you're always going to get sellouts. They're always going to turn the lights on. All the all the fans are going to turn on their iPhones or whatever. In the fourth quarter, very similar, the two places. And for Utah to come in, I'm telling you that, and the way they do the ball control offense, run the ball, I love that. I thought it's a very good offensive philosophy. It's very tough, and you don't see that in practice. You can't simulate it.
Right.
It's very hard, and that's why. And Utah's done that for years. And of course, I faced Utah when I was at Oregon,
right,
and faced them when I was at Colorado. So had some success, beat them a few times, and lost them a few times.
I was surprised. I was surprised on the last drive. Utah had first and goal at the 5, plenty of time. He throws the first ball out of bounds, which is a smart play. And then the second down play, he tries to jam a ball in there in that zone defense in the end zone on that slant. I was very surprised he tried to jam a ball in there like that when he still had a third down to play with.
Well, he's some quarterbacks have a lot of confidence, and he felt like he could get that throw in there. And it's, he'll tell you not a good decision, made a wrong decision, but also he's a very confident quarterback and a very good quarterback. And, it's game's on the line. You look at that game, you look at Florida State game. I mean, I'm telling you,
great.
Week 1 is unbelievable. Just shows how close these teams are, and how the parity out there and some of these teams. But those two teams are. Well, I think Florida's going to have, very good success, and I think Utah will too. I really do. If they keep getting better from where they're at right now,
absolutely,
those are two very good football teams.
And that Keithy kid at tight end is a legit NFL player at tight end.
Right.
He's a good player at tight end for Utah. They are gonna use him. You can tell he's their number one option in the passing game, no doubt about it. They scheme. I was surprised they did not scheme their best play for Keithy in the end zone there at the end.
Well, they might have on the next play.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to know what they're thinking, because you're the offense coordinator in that situation. You're thinking, you've already gone through those scenarios many times in your mind, in the film room, and out in the practice field. And you certainly have your list of plays that you're going to run in that situation. 2nd and 5, 3rd and 5, even, 4th down, because you do on defense. I know that I have certain calls that I'm going to make, in those situations. And, it's those are already played out.
Right. Well, you hope so. If you're a good coaching staff, they're played out.
Well, they are. They are. Those are good coaches.
Yep, no doubt. All right, listen to the coach and the kicker segment with former USF head football coach Jim Leavitt. We're breaking down all the Florida games. We had some wild finishes. We won't talk about it much, but FIU wins 38-37 in overtime. Coach McIntyre, who you might know, won his first game as FIU coach in overtime over Bryant. Willie Taggart, FAU lose a tough one, 41-38 at Ohio. Again, great games. There were 4 tremendous games involving Florida schools this weekend. Let's go to Tampa, BYU USF. This game was, you hate to say this game was over in the first quarter. First play of the game, BYU goes 75 yards for a touchdown. USF goes 3 and out, score again. Then USF throws a bubble screen interception return. How demoralizing is it for a staff, for the team, when the game's basically over at the end of the first quarter?
Well, it's tough. There's no way you can sugarcoat it. It's, BYU coming all the way across the country. It's just like Utah going to Gainesville. But, it's not the same environment. But, you got to start off fast. And unfortunately, the wrong team started off fast. And, the lightning delay, that's not really an excuse you can use, because certainly BYU, sat in there and, was ready to play.
Right.
And you had two teams that both had a lot of people back. You had a lot of leadership back at both places. Certainly the quarterback at BYU he manages the game well.
Yeah.
And, I thought the quarterback at, that they went with the Baylor transfer, he showed that he's got talent.
Right.
Made some poor decisions that you just can't make. But yeah, it was disappointing. As a coach, I'm sure Coach Scott is, he's disappointed at the, I'm sure he felt they were very prepared, felt like they're ready to play, but the reality is they weren't. And so you're gonna have to go back and kind of regroup, and spend an inordinate amount of time with your staff, more than the players right now. You got to get your staff and you got to get those things corrected, and it ain't going to be fun. It's going to be some. I know I've been in those kind of meetings before, and and you're just going to sit with one side of the staff for probably 8 hours watching the game, and you're going to be pretty direct, and you're going to spend about 8 hours with the other side and be pretty direct. I know I was, and because it comes down to the head coach. Came down to me, and it was my responsibility. So you're gonna make sure that that's done, because the coaches on your staff, the reason they're there, hopefully, is because they care and love young people, and they owe it to the players to make sure that they're as prepared as possible to not let those things happen. And I know they worked hard. I know they've got good coaches, but then none of that matters. It's just like we talked about. Florida State won.
Right.
You win or you lose. And so,
and as a coach, and for you, I'm sure you obviously nobody ever wants to lose a game, but when you lose a game in that kind of fashion, when you just get manhandled from the get-go like that, that's the part where, as a coach, that's where you have to be very direct with everybody, because you can't, not that you don't want to lose, but if you play well losing as opposed to playing lousy losing, there's a big difference, right?
Well, you're at home also.
Right.
I mean, it's a home game, and it's not like it's on the road. And one thing we pointed to is you want to win the home opener, but you're right. At least you want to battle and fight, and do those things. And I'm sure South Florida will do, they play Howard next week. Now, Larry Scott, who played for me, as their head coach, and they certainly don't want to stumble in that game. They need to come out and and I mean, they need to come out with an attitude. They need to come out with very angry. I know the practices that I would have this next week is going to be as intense as you've ever seen. There ain't going to be a whole lot of fun. Nobody likes losing, and you're going to need to get this thing corrected and get going right now, because after that they're on the road at Louisville, on the road at Florida, and you're not worried about, again, like I said, I never told people about winning and losing games. That what bothered me so much, or what would bother me so much, and had, because I've lost some big games, is the play, the play on the field,
right?
And like I told you last week, you win enough snaps, you win the game. If you don't, you lose. And I'd be, the disappointment is just the play. Heck with a win and loss and getting beat so bad. The execution and how we want to establish ourselves.
How much do you think the weather delay? I know both teams had to deal with it. I get it, but do you think the weather delay, as far as the fandom, the intensity, the excitement of the game starting, did you think I think from even the weather perspective, it was a cooler day after the weather delay. I mean, do you think that had anything to do with the result?
No, if you're a person that makes excuses, you would. But there's no excuses. It's
right.
I mean, I've been through those kind of things, and you don't always know how to handle it.
Right.
I didn't. We just sat in the locker room, and I had our position coaches get with their players and just kind of go through game plan.
Right.
I also had the players just kind of get by themselves and just, always, always, always want them to have headphones and those kind of things because everybody gets ready differently.
Sure.
Some people like to listen to music. Some people don't want to hear anything. So I always had people make sure you had headphones or something like that because the guy next to you might not want to hear any music or anything like that. That was just my style. But
Right.
There's other people are different. There's so many different ways that you can handle that time, I guess. But I think the bottom line is when you go out and you're in the game, you're in the game. You're playing. So
well, like I said, this will be you made a great point. This will be a great week for USF to know where they are. If they come out lethargic or don't play very well against Howard, there's probably problems developing there. But if they come out and snap back, and like I said, this week of practice, you're right, there'll probably be a very challenging week of practice for those players, knowing that they're playing Howard, a team they should beat. But yeah, you're right. That's probably the right approach to do that because you can't, again, like we talked about, it's not that you lose games, but you can't be getting beat by 30 and 40 every week against the decent teams you're playing on your schedule.
Well, BYU's a really good team.
They are.
I mean, I was very impressed with them. Now their best player was out, didn't make the trip, and then their top receiver gets hurt, his ankle,
right
away in the second quarter. It just shows they have some depth at those positions, and it shows how important it is to have a quarterback like they do and a big offensive line.
Their line,
did
a
great job.
Yes,
that's the first thing defensively. You just can't. And I know their defense coordinator is good. Good, he's got a good resume. I know that he knows what he's doing. So, but you just can't. You can't let another team run the ball. If they're going to throw deep balls and beat you that way, that's one thing. But to run it right up your, you don't want that to happen.
Right.
That can't happen. It's got to get. You got to correct that right away. But this is a long season. It's one game.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that you got to point out to the players. It's one game. It's not like you're 0-10.
Right.
You're 0-1.
Right.
And you can't make more out of it than that. Get it corrected. Let's play well against Howard and then take one game at a time because at Louisville they're not going to be favored. They're not going to be favored at Florida. But that has nothing to do. I used to always tell the guys, it has nothing to do with winning a conference championship.
That's right.
They're not going to play for a national championship. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So, and the key is get this thing right through your non-conference games and get ready to to build to be in a position to go after a conference championship. And
right.
That's they haven't lost that goal. They haven't, if their goal was undefeated season, they're not going to get that. But that was never really one of my goals. It was always
right.
We had certain goals we had, and that wasn't one of them. Winning conference championship was one of them.
Yeah. So all right. So Miami and Central Florida had ho-hum games with their opponents, dominant performances. Not a lot to talk about with them, honestly. Did you notice anything as far as obviously Mario, new coach at Miami? Anything did you notice with that? You may not even watch the game. I didn't see much of the game. How do you, again, they're building their first test is A&M in week 3. They go to A&M in week 3. That we'll talk about that game in depth as we get there. But last thing, I'll get you out of here. Talk about the anticipation. You coached in the NFL for several years. Week 1 of the NFL this week is coming up for these guys. What's the difference in mood and in preparation between a college week 1 and an NFL week 1?
Well, the game is very different. You're dealing with grown men that
right.
that is their livelihood. It's very different. Like I said, you got pros, you got grown men that are playing the game. It's a different deal. It's a different mind. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. But it's the same thing. You want to win your opener. You want to win that first game. And the preseason is a preseason. You don't even, now you've had all your cuts.
Right.
You've moved on a lot of players. You're down to very few players. And
let me ask you this. How challenging is for you as the position coach to have to coach a guy who might have just joined the team less than a week ago, to be in a position where he might have to play a little bit or on special teams or whatever. Whereas college, you've had the kids for a month, 6 weeks or whatever it is. How challenging is it to have to coach a guy, a linebacker potentially, who might have to play a little bit for you and to get him up to speed to where at least he can be functional?
Well, it's very challenging because I had that situation. I had Pat Willis, Navarro Bowman, Ahmad Brooks, Alden Smith. Those guys were,
Yeah.
of course, Alden was a rookie and he was playing, but we only played him in certain sub packages. But with Pat and Navarro was not a big deal. Those guys were going to be ready to play, and they played great.
But the guy you sign off the street after cut down day, you bring him in, and he might be your backup linebacker or a special teams guy. You got to get him up to speed a little bit to be able to function if he has to play.
Well, it happened my last year with San Francisco. We had a rookie that had to come in and play, and he ended up making All Pro. And but he was going to make a number of mistakes in the game, and it wasn't the same as Pat or Navarro. I mean, because he hadn't played,
right?
And you do your best. You work extremely hard. He's going to play a little bit more in the preseason games than normal, and but the real tough part is when you're in the middle of the season and you get people hurt and you have to go you have to go off the street. Right. And bring somebody in, and you have 3 days to get them ready to play, and they're starting for you. And it's not, if they're not ready, it's not their fault. It's your fault. The GM's going to make that very clear. And the head coach, you want to stay here and be a part of this staff. You better get this guy ready. And that gets pretty intense. You're going to be with a player sometimes till 2 or 3 in the morning, early in the week, to make sure they understand the defensive calls and the packages. And usually, hopefully they've been, you've picked them up off the street of a team that runs a similar defense than you run, that's important.
Right. Well, Coach, great job. I won't tell anybody you threw 4 interceptions against Sarasota Riverview.
Okay. Thank you.
We're going to tell everybody you were an All-American safety at Mizzou.
There you go.
You were a top 5. You were a 5-star prospect coming out of Dixie Hollins.
Right. Yeah. That's what we need to do.
Have a great week, Coach. We'll see you next time.
All right. See you, Jason. All right. Bye.
All right, bud. We'll see you next time on the Coach and the Kicker segment. We'll be right back.